Okay, Kelly, here I am, I said, gesturing to the small, white house behind me. The camera on my phone wasn't the best, but it wasn't like I was going to bring a real camera out for a stupid bet. The house was quaint and plain, so it was hard to imagine so many people were afraid of it. Bootleg Ghost Adventures is about to begin. I made my way to the front door. Technically, I wasn't allowed to go in, even though no one lived there. However, no one tended to follow that rule, considering the lock was broken and graffiti littered parts of the outside. The grass hadn't been cut in so long that it nearly went to my knees. I guess the ghosts that were said to live there didn't care much about lawn care. 342 Hill Lane was said to be one of the most haunted places on the East Coast. It wasn't 100 years old like a lot of other supposedly haunted houses, but what did make it infamous was scarier than ghosts. Edwin Blake, or the Demon of Green Lake as the media liked to call him, was on a rampage during the 1960s. A serial killer was on the loose and nobody could catch him. The poor, single mother who lived at 342 Hill Lane fit exactly Blake's type. Blake killed her daughter. A slit throat. Horrible, of course, but the girl got off lucky compared to what he did to her mother next. Thankfully, they caught the bastard not too long after the double homicide. He got executed back in the 90s. Any story that horrific was bound to leave some kind of an impact. Not long after the murders, people started to report seeing figures in the windows that would disappear in the blink of an eye. Screams when no one was in the house. Cold spots, the door closing on its own, yada yada yada, all your typical ghost shenanigans. The only thing noteworthy about it was the hauntings drove away nearly everyone who tried to live in the house. Personally, I thought it was bull. The mind sees what it wants to see. Just add a creepy backstory to something and any little thing can become proof of the supernatural. I loudly mentioned that to my roommate Kelly while she was watching one of those ghost hunting shows. I mean, they weren't even doing a good job. One of the ghost hunters was trying to talk to Blake. You know, the guy who didn't even die there? Of course, this launched us into a huge debate. Eventually, Kelly bet me that if our college's football team didn't win, I had to go to Hill Lane myself. I agreed, thinking our stellar football team couldn't possibly lose. Well, guess who's the fool now? Spoilers, it's the one trespassing into the house where people got murdered with her iPhone as company. The house was completely barren. Scuff marks on the floor were the only signs that anyone had ever lived there. I shivered a bit. Those people weren't lying about it being cold. Perhaps the lack of heating was to blame, or maybe I was letting the scary stories get to me. I walked deep into the home, going towards the kitchen. The only things in it were a broken refrigerator and an oven with a cracked door. This was the big one, the room where the mother was murdered. Most evidence, read muffled noises and slight banging sounds, was found here. Look, I sing-songed into the camera. An empty kitchen. Spooky, huh? I smiled mockingly. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a stain on the floor. I knew it couldn't be the woman's blood, but a part of me got chills looking at it. A rush of guilt washed over me. Even if the ghosts were urban legends, it didn't change the fact that 2 people got murdered here. Using it as fodder for a stupid pet seemed more and more in bad taste. I sighed. I should get this over with. I turned to leave, only to see a girl watching me just outside the window. I flinched so hard that I nearly dropped my phone. My shock quickly turned to anger. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. The girl simply cocked her head as if confused. I went up to the window and knocked on it. "Listen, if you're gonna call the police, I'll leave now." The girl smiled and left. I briefly wondered if I should go in case she really did call someone. However, then I heard the door opening and footsteps echoing through the empty house. The girl came into the kitchen. She gave me a giddy smile.
"Are you with one of those ghost hunting shows?"
I stared blankly at her. The girl appeared to be wearing a school uniform, with a white blouse and blue skirt. Combined with her pigtails, it made her age a bit hard to tell. I think she was around 13 years old. I held my phone up. "Kid, do I look like I have a network deal?"
"So you're a YouTuber?"
"No, I'm not," I scowled. "I'm just here for a bet." "Why are you here? Didn't your parents tell you not to talk to strangers?" The girl simply shrugged.
"I like to talk to all the people who come around here. It's fun."
Suddenly, her eyes lit up.
"Hey, I bet you don't know the most haunted place. Everybody thinks it's the kitchen, but really it's upstairs. Do you want me to show you?"
I looked at her in confusion. Would your parents be okay with that? Talking to some cameras for a cable show is one thing, but going into an abandoned building with a random college student you just met is another. A little of the light in the girl's eyes dimmed.
"My mom wouldn't mind. She's gone to work. She lets me do this all the time. Besides, I don't have anything better to do."
Despite her attempts to sound casual, I couldn't help but hear the tinge of sadness in her voice. It hit me that this girl was probably lonely and just wanted some attention. "Okay," I relented, "but promise you won't do this again? You shouldn't trust everyone you meet." The girl laughed.
"Trust me, I know that."
She happily skipped up the stairs, each one creaking as she moved.
"I'm Nancy, by the way. What's your name?"
"Michelle," I answered. I was only halfway convinced the stairs would give way as I went up them. Nancy talked non-stop, going on and on about all the shows she had been on. It should have been irritating, but I had to admit, it was nice to have some company, especially when I got upstairs. While I doubted Nancy's claims it was more haunted, it certainly was creepier than the downstairs. Wallpaper was peeling off from age. The floor practically shrieked with every step I took. With barely any windows, the hallway was dim at best. Even though it was day out, because no way was I trespassing into an abandoned house at night, it felt more like dusk. Even though I tried to write it off, I did feel a bit spooked the more we walked. Nancy didn't seem fazed at all, carrying on her personal monologue.
"I think it'd be great to be in the movies. With all the great roles and the pretty clothes and working with so many people."
Her voice trailed off. She then sighed.
"It's too bad."
"What's too bad?" I asked. The light from my phone was the brightest thing in the hallway. Nancy turned around, looking like she was surprised I responded. I bristled a bit. I knew I wasn't the greatest conversationalist, but I didn't think I was that bad.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Nancy turned to a door and gave me a smirk.
Here we are.
With just a light push, the door opened. Based on Nancy's smug expression, I figured it was a trick she came up with. I whistled as I walked in. Wow, didn't expect it to be so pink. In all honesty, it was a bit eerie. A small window let barely any light in. The pink walls may have been bright once, but faded to a near whitish color. Wait, this is where the daughter died, right? Nancy stood in the doorframe. She looked at me with wide eyes.
You know that?
Yeah, in one of those ghost hunting shows, they asked Blake or the daughter if they could smile. I don't know why. I idly strolled across the room, recording evidence that I actually performed the bet.
It's because that's the last thing he would say.
I looked back at Nancy quizzically. She bit her lip and looked down.
Before Blake would, kill.
The last part came out as a whisper. Nancy had lost the confidence she had previously exuded. She hadn't even stepped foot in the room. Perhaps she was more spooked by this house than she let on. Jeez, kind of a dick move to ask her that. I cringed a bit when I realized I kind of cursed in front of somebody else's kid. Yet Nancy just let out an exasperated, "Exactly!" She then gave me a quizzical look.
By the way, why don't you ever call them by their names?
I just blinked in confusion.
The mother and daughter who died here,
Nancy clarified. Oh, them. Yeah, I didn't really remember their names. It sucks what happened to them, but I think everyone comes here because of Blake.
But this is their house,
Nancy said, wide-eyed.
It's not fair that everyone remembers him but not them.
I shrugged. Listen, you got a point. Still, the world doesn't work like that. Serial killers are just more interesting to people than those they murdered. It's sad, but nothing in life is ever fair.
I guess you're right,
Nancy mumbled. I recorded the restroom. Like the rest of the house, it was eerie, no doubt about it. However, I had yet to see a single ghost, ghoul, or phantom. I smiled when I thought about how I was going to rub it in Kelly's face. As I tried to leave, Nancy stood in the doorframe, blocking my way out.
You can't leave yet, Nancy declared. You haven't been in the closet. That's the absolutely scariest part of the house.
I turned to look at the closet at the back of the room. Even in the dim light, I could see it was full of dust. A cobweb covered a small shelf in it. Yeah, no. I'm not risking a coughing fit to see something that doesn't exist. Nancy glared at me before her expression became mischievous.
Oh, I get it now. You're too scared to try it.
Did you not hear the part about the dust and the fact ghosts don't exist? She giggled.
I heard your excuses.
I rolled my eyes and tried to leave the room, but Nancy blocked my way. I stepped back and scowled at her. Nancy only laughed. She tucked her hands under her arms.
Mama, somebody's a chicken, she mocked.
How old are you, 5? Nancy remained infuriatingly unaffected by my insult. Finally, I groaned. I'll go in. Will you let me leave? Nancy immediately stopped her chicken routine and nodded. With a huff on my breath, I walked into the closet. For extra effect, I closed the door behind me. Now I was utterly in the dark. Just as I expected, I began coughing due to dust seemingly covering every part of the closet. After a few seconds, I tried to open the door. To my surprise, it didn't move an inch. I banged on the door. "Nice joke, Nancy. I know this is you." No matter how hard I tried, the door wouldn't budge, and I began to worry she had blocked it with something. I could call someone using my phone if I got too desperate, but being trapped in a closet by a girl in middle school wasn't something I was eager to share. I decided to try to ram the door and step back to give myself more momentum. I felt the touch of cloth when I did. I turned and saw the outline of clothes. I touched them to make sure they were real. "What the hell?" I said under my breath. Suddenly, a loud bang ran through the air. "Nancy?" I called out. I didn't get any answer, only the sound of struggling. A woman screamed, full of pain and fear. I backed up so quickly I hit my head on the wall behind me. "Stop it!" a voice yelled. I don't know who it was. It didn't sound like my voice, but it came from the closet. I covered my mouth just in case. For a brief second, there was nothing but silence. Then, I made out the low rumbling of a man's voice, followed by a higher, desperate-sounding voice. My breath caught in my throat when I heard the footsteps coming down the hall. The woman was pleading with the man. At first, they were indistinct, but the closer the footsteps got, the louder the woman got. When the man was near the pink room, I could hear the woman cry out, "She's just a little girl." The man ignored her pleas. The door to the room slammed open with such force I heard it crash against the wall. It was quiet for a while. I had the feeling the man was searching, hunting, for me. I tried not to breathe, to quiet my own heartbeat, anything to keep him from finding me. Then, he began walking towards the closet. Time seemed to slow down. Every step he took felt like it lasted an eternity. I broke into a cold sweat. I wondered if that's what cornered animals feel like. Every emotion you ever felt turned up to the highest degree. A thought popped into my mind. It was simple, but the hardest thing I'd ever had to hear. I'm going to die. The handle to the closet door turned. I shrunk in the corner of the closet. My heart felt like it would leap out of my chest. I covered my head with my hands and waited for the end. I screamed when I saw the light come into the small prison I was trapped in.
"Michelle, are you okay?"
a young girl asked. I opened my eyes and saw Nancy staring at me. She appeared confused. For a while, I was too. Then I crashed back into reality, and I bolted out of that room. When I was out, I looked at my phone. It was still recording, but it was down to 20%. I shrieked when I heard someone behind me, and I whirled around to see Nancy looking concerned. My fear transformed into anger. "What kind of prank was that?" I yelled. The younger girl flinched back. "What prank?" Nancy asked. My glare must have scared her because she stepped back. "I swear I didn't do anything. You were in there for a pretty long time." She frowned, turning her gaze to the floor. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know you would react like that." At first, I didn't believe her. Then, I thought about how hard it would be for a single person to pull all that off. I looked past her into the closet. The clothes I could swear I had touched were gone. I sighed. Okay, I'm sorry, this house must be getting to me. I went down the stairs and finished recording. Nancy followed me out.
You know, it was a lot of fun talking to you,
Nancy said.
Hey, do you think we could get a picture together?
Sure, I said, absent-mindedly. Nancy got next to me and smiled. I tried to fake one, but the anxiety I felt from my little episode in the closet still haunted me. Nancy waved at me as I got into my car. I waved back. "I'll see you in the movies," I called out. Nancy's smile was strange. It seemed almost sad. The drive back to my dorm was hard. I couldn't stop thinking about the strange delusion I had in the house. What had caused it? Claustrophobia? Did the scary stories finally get to me? I practically threw my phone at Kelly when I got back. Here, I did it. The scariest thing in it was all the dust. I was trying to calm myself down by reading a book when Kelly came into my room. She gave me a flat look.
Nice try.
She held my phone.
You really thought I was gonna fall for this?
Fall for what? I asked. Then, I watched the video. I was talking to Nancy, only Nancy wasn't there. I watched in stunned silence as I had a conversation with no one. Slowly, we reached the pink room. In the closet, there was the sound of my heavy breathing, but nothing else. When the door opened, the phone was pointed to the floor. I don't understand, I stuttered. There was a little girl. I was talking to her. Remembering the photo, I handed the phone back to Kelly. Look at the photos. I swear, there's the proof. Kelly appeared to be concerned about me. When she tried to ask if I was okay, I just shoved the phone at her. She went to the photos, and within seconds, she screamed and dropped the phone. What the hell? What? What is it? I picked up the phone. The second I saw the photo, I nearly stopped breathing. I was in the photo, weakly smiling, but next to me was a dead girl. There was no other way to describe her. Her skin had turned a sickening shade of gray, and her wide eyes were clouded, unfocused on anything. The worst part was her neck. A long gash marked the front of her throat. Blood poured out of it, turning her white blouse a dark crimson. The only sign of any life was the grin on her face. It was wide, showing all her teeth. It didn't seem happy or threatening. It looked to be the forced smile of a terrified little girl. But maybe that's just because I knew what she was feeling that night. No wonder poor Nancy was so proud of being on those ghost shows. It was the only thing close to being in the movie she could get now. It's hard to be a star when you're dead.
A huge thank you to all my poltergeists. Stephen Swiftbird, Shadow Blackhawk, Spirit Father, King Gallant, JTX 31, Joker Smurf 3, Daniel O'Connell, Gary, Forever, Nathan Konirk, John, Twisted Skipster, and Benjamin Croon. Your donations are much appreciated. So, thank you. From the bottom of my heart.
The plan had been to go on a hike, but it had been too cold out. Luckily, the furnace in the basement was, to our amazement, still burning. One of our favorite things to do when staying at a cabin is to read through all the journal entries of the previous guests. I read for an hour before finally arriving at the journal entry of the guests who had stayed before us. I was very interested in this one. These people had to have a good story.